month of Ramadan, we were doing tafsir in the 27th juz, and we reached Surah Ar-Rahman, and we were in Surah Ar-Rahman. We did the first portion, which had to do with Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the insan. So the first portion of Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the insan, His mercy over the insan and the knowledge that He's given him, starting with knowledge of wahi, knowledge of Quran. The second portion speaks about Jahannam and punishment, and how extremely important it is for us to understand and pay attention to these ayat and think about them and fear Allah Azza wa Jal. Why? Because fear can do things that joy cannot do. For example, in this latter portion, yes, there is the discussion is about Jannah. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us about Jannah and extremely many beautiful ayat. But a human being is naturally, not just human beings but even animals, they learn to do things or not do things based on rewards and punishments. We also, based on rewards and punishments, we learn. And so the reward is backed by a happiness, a joy. That's the emotion. The emotion behind the punishment is fear, that someone fears. And so when a person fears something, then they won't do it. They'll stay away from it. So fear is also an extremely important thing when reading the ayat related to Jahannam, etc. Punishment, the hereafter. Now we move on to the next portion. The latter portion, it only has to do with Jannah, which are pretty much the last 1.5 page of Surah Ar-Rahman. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. But for whoever fears standing in judgment before his Lord, there are 2 gardens in paradise awaiting. So the person who fears the day that they'll be stood in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning they think about hisab, they think about accounting. Right? So over here itself, right, the ayah says khafa, to fear. One has to fear. One has to fear these moments. One has to fear the idea that they'll be standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Azza wa Jal will ask them. Right? Now, something extremely important or beneficial for us to do is thinking about the hereafter while also thinking about this life. Right? When Allah Azza wa Jal will speak to us about Jannah, He'll talk to us about things which we know about, rivers and fruits, etc. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to imagine Jannah, wants us to think about Jannah. How can we do it if Allah were to tell us about things which in Jannah we don't know about? Which there are things we know. The Messenger of Allah said, in Jannah is what the eye hasn't seen, what that hasn't come onto your imagination, no ear has heard. But at the same time, Allah Azza wa Jal is speaking about fruits, He is speaking about rivers, He is speaking about things that we do know. Why? So that He can encourage us, so that we can be encouraged from His words, so that we can ponder upon it, so that there's something at least for us to connect to. And we'll mention that after. Now in this life, how many times we have to stand up and give account for the things we do? And that moment that when you're asked about what you did and why you did in this life, we know the feeling. It's like you want to shrink. Whether it's your young person and your parents ask you, or your teacher asks you, right? Or when you grow up and the community asks you, your family members ask you, your relatives ask you, right? Or leaders ask you, or you're stood up in front of the law and you're asked. Right? These moments come in our life and we fear it. Right? We fear it. We feel we want to shrink. We regret. There's that sense of regret that, oh, I wish I would have never done that. These are exactly the feelings we will have in the hereafter, except multiplied by more than 10 times. Because everything is وَالْآخِرَةُ أَكْبَرُ دَرَجَاتُ وَأَكْبَرُ تَفْضِيلًا. Everything is much, much more extreme in the hereafter. If it's reward and joy, then it's also much more. But if it's regret, if it's fear, then it's also much more. So the one who fears standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who prepares for it. Because when you fear something, you prepare for it. Al-kayyisu man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut. The intelligent person is one who takes account of himself and then prepares for what's after death. Prepares for what's after death. That's the one who truly fears Allah. So that person will have jannatan, 2 jannahs. This isn't to say that he'll actually just necessarily have 2 jannahs, but no, he'll have, there's a few opinions regarding this. One is that he will have multiplied number. Jannah, jannatan means double. In the Arabic language, 2 refers to double, right? So 1 jannah after the other he'll be given. For example, when we say in Hajj and Umrah, labbaik, this is actually means, oh Allah, I'm here twice, labbaik, 2. Yeah? It comes from the number 2. Right? Why? As the scholars of Nahu, scholars of grammar, they mention, it is to give this meaning that I'm present to you time after time, in front of you time after time. I will always be here. Call me once, call me twice, call me thrice, I'll be there. Right? So the same way over here, Jannatan means Jannatan means 1 Jannah after the other. This person will have 1 Jannah after the other. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? The other meaning of Jannatan, 2 Jannahs, is one of the ulama he mentions, is that Allah makes that person's dunya and akhirah Jannah. Allah makes that person's dunya and akhirah Jannah. Right? And it's true that the people of piety in the past, they would say that we've found in our worship of Allah, our connection with Allah, we've already found the Jannah that Allah Azza wa Jalla is promising us. We found it in this life. And many of the kings of the past, as it's said about Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and after him as well, they would say to the scholars, we wish, the righteous, pious leaders, we wish we had what you have. And only if you could give us what you have. And then the scholars and the righteous people in response would say that if you gave us the entire kingdom and the army and the leadership, we wouldn't trade you what we have. We wouldn't trade you what we have. The peace of mind, the sakina of one's ruh, of one's soul, the freedom that a person attains through their knowledge, through their ibadah, right? That is, there's no equivalent to it. Which of your Lord's blessings will you belie? Dhawata afnan. Gardens replete with lush bending. Dhawata afnan. Right. So then Allah Azza wa Jalla now starts to describe the greenery of Jannah, that it will have much greenery. And so the greenery brings peace to the eye. Now specifically, obviously, the Quran, when Jannah is being described, for example. Now for the Arab that's from the Mediterranean, just I had a guest over that was also from the Mediterranean, the Khalij. And he was saying, it's so nice to see the greenery here, because we don't see greenery. This is why they're trying to plant greenery now and make greenery there, because they're dying for the greenery. So when you don't have it, then you really realize what is its true blessing. But the coolness that it brings to a person's eye, to their body, right? Allah Azza wa Jalla describes this, that this will be in Jannah. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ. All through them both are 2 running springs. There will be springs running through the Jannah. Right? There's a very good book as well, I do recommend. Maybe it's translated as well in English. If not, it's by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah. Hadi al-arwah ila bilad al-afrah. What pushes the soul to the abode of happinesses, joys. It's a book on Jannah in which he's gathered pretty much all of the related ayat and ahadith. Right? So we should have shawq to Jannah. We should want Jannah. The Messenger of Allah said, ask Allah Azza wa Jal for Firdaus al-A'la. ask Allah Azza wa Jal for the highest abode in Jannah. We should desire it. Now, these things we're hearing them, and it's one time a person came to me and he said, what am I going to, he even said this, what am I going to do with the rivers? What am I going to do with all these trees? We already have all of these things. This is also a very scary thing to say. Why is this person saying this? Because truly look how much we have. And this is something to be afraid of. What did the Messenger of Allah came out, he was hungry. Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu came out. The Prophet asked him, why did you come out? He said, because of hunger. Umar radhiyallahu anhu said, I came out. He saw both of them. He said, I'm out because it's hungry. It's dhuhr time, extremely hot outside. The Messenger of Allah says, I'm also out because I'm hungry. One of the Sahaba radhiyallahu anhu, they go to their household. They meet the household. After some time, the Sahabi comes and he gives them rutub, soft dates with water. The Prophet ﷺ started to cry, and he started to say that this is the na'im, the enjoyment of this life which we will be asked about. Now really think about it. They're just having soft dates. They're not meaning they're not hard. They're fresh dates and water. And the Prophet ﷺ is crying that this is the na'im, this is the joyful life, the comfortable life which we'll be asked about. And it's something that we should be afraid about, that how comfortable is our life. Right? We're in this time where it's literally just luxury. Anything at the push of a button. And we should really ask Allah Azza wa Jal for forgiveness, for our israf, for the way we live, for the habits that we've had. Right? So that's one thing. The Sahaba radhiyallahu anhum used to fear that our Jannah is going to be put in front of us in this life, and then there'll be no sacrifice that we've made, and then we'll have nothing to hold in the hereafter. This is something the Sahaba, they feared. Now another important principle to understand is that Jannah, although we are given these expressions like rivers and fruit and all these things, the Messenger of Allah said that there's nothing similar between dunya and Jannah except the names of the things. Meaning how a river will be in Jannah, we don't know. What is it? How is it? We don't know. Allah is telling us it's a river, the name is the same. How is the fruit? This is why then the Messenger of Allah said, one will take a bite of a fruit, and each bite will have a different flavor of the same fruit. What type of fruit is this? Right? So there's nothing similar between dunya and Jannah except the names. The names are used to convey to us so we can understand. And so this should make us want to desire Jannah. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? فِيهِمَا مِنْ كُلِّ فَاكِهَةٍ زَوْجَانِ All through them both are all varieties of fruit in pairs of every kind. So you have many pairs of every kind to explain that the number will never finish. You never have to be worried that the tree will never carry enough or the supply will finish.
فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى فُرُشٍ بَطَائِنُهَا مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ وَجَنَى الْجَنَّتَيْنِ دَانٍ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِنَّ قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌّ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ كَأَنَّهُنَّ الْيَاقُوتُ وَالْمَرْجَانُ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
So last week we did one of the portions regarding Jannah. We mentioned Surah Ar-Rahman is distributed into three portions. The first is regarding Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy over creating the insan and granting him knowledge, and the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal which appears in all of these things. And then the second portion had to do with the punishment and Jahannam, and the third portion has to do with Jannah. And they come in different orders in the Quran. Sometimes Allah Azza wa Jal comes with khawf first, fearful things such as Jahannam first and Jannah after, and sometimes Jannah first and Jahannam after. In this last portion, Allah Azza wa Jal is speaking about a place in Jannah which is lower than the ones which were discussed and described in the last week. In the last week, Allah Azza wa Jal described a high place for the one who fears standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. And because of their fear for that day, they prepare for that day, and describes Jannah. Over here, Allah Azza wa Jal is describing Jannah for people who are below that level. The beauty of it is that there's not much difference when you look at the description. There's slight difference, right? There is slight difference, but this is the beauty of Jannah, in which it comes in hadith that the people of Jannah will not have regret like they have in this life. When any person gets any place in Jannah, they will be happy and more than happy, more than joyful, more than content, which they will feel in the Jannah, which they never could feel in this life. And so Allah Azza wa Jal is speaking about a maqam, a place which is a bit lower than the one discussed in the previous passage. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمِن دُونِهِمَا جَنَّتَانِ. And apart from them both, there are two other gardens in paradise. Referring to, apart from the abodes mentioned before. The Jannatan, as we mentioned, it goes with the Nazm al-Quran. One thing is that it does go with the flow of the surah, but the Quran doesn't just follow a literary flow without purpose. There is a purpose, and that is to describe that there is much in Jannah for you as well, for even a lower place. So even the Jannah for that person is multiplied. So for the one who fears Allah and is of a higher place, Jannatan, two Jannahs. Over here, for those below them, also Jannatan. So the blessings are for the lowest to the highest of Jannah, very much immense. A lot of blessings, a lot to enjoy, vast paradise. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? This is something to be extremely happy about. Right? Even that, as mentioned in hadith, the last person who will enter into Jannah, right? The last person who will enter into Jannah, when he'll exit from the fire, he'll be like a black coal, and then he'll be washed, right? And then he'll ask Allah Azza wa Jal, right, to have just a place outside of Jannah, and Allah Azza wa Jal will grant him a place in Jannah which is 7 times greater than the earth and everything it contains. And that's for the last person to enter into Jannah. Mudhammatan. Both of them are a deeply dense green. Both of them are a deeply dense green. So in the previous passage as well, Zawata Afnan, mentioned regarding the greenness, the bushes of Jannah which are lush. So over here as well, Mudahammatan, those which are deeply dense green. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ نَضَّاخَتَانِ, all through them both are two gushing springs. In the previous passage, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ, within them are two springs running. Over here, Allah Azza wa Jalla is describing فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ نَضَّاخَتَانِ, that there are two gushing springs. So is there any difference? This is where the Mufassirun try to differ or understand. That if Allah Azza wa Jalla is describing a place in Jannah which is a little bit lower than the one mentioned before, then could there be any difference in any of these mentioned blessings? And so one of the Mufassirun, he mentions that the Jannah is a place of sukoon, a place of peace. And so the more that there are things of a peaceful nature mentioned, that is a higher place in Jannah. So فِيهِمَا, if you compare فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ نَضَّاخَتَانِ to فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ, one is where springs are flowing and running through, and one is where the springs are gushing. The sound of a gushing spring, when you hear, for example, the gushing noise of water, it's not as calm and soft and beautiful to the ear as when you just have a simple flowing, running water. The flowing and running water has a much more beautiful sound to the ear. Right? So the ulama, they mentioned this as one reason, that Jannah is a place of sukoon, sakina, a place of peace and calmness and enjoyment of blessings. And a person sees those blessings increase as their rank increases. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ, all through them both are fruits and date palms and pomegranates. So in the passage before, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فِيهِمَا مِن كُلِّ فَاكِهَةٍ زَوْجَانِ. So in that passage, Allah Azza wa Jalla did not mention the exact fruit, but He mentioned that varieties of fruits. Right? Sometimes when in the Quran many things are left to be unknown, nakira, right? In the language, something which is unknown, undefined, and this is to point to something great. That think about it, imagine. Why? Because even what you will imagine, it will not come near. It will not come near to what is actually there in Jannah. Over here, the passage, instead of mentioning zawjan, multiplication and pairs, Allah Azza wa Jalla just mentions the fruits that will be there. Right? And I mentioned last week a principle which the Rasulullah said in a hadith as well, and Ibn Abbas and other Sahaba would mention it as a principle regarding Jannah as well, that there's nothing similar between Jannah and Dunya except for Asma, the names which are used to point to those things. A pomegranate of Jannah is entirely different from a pomegranate of this world. Why? Because the fruit in Jannah, as it comes in hadith, a person will bite into it, and each time they bite into it, the flavor will change, it will enhance. This is not like the fruits of this life. The trees of the next life are much greater in size, they're much more lush, and when a person will be reclining on their bed, it will lower its branch and a person will pluck the fruit. This is unlike this life. Right? So there'll be many many things which are extremely different, but it's from the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal that He describes it to us using language which is close to our minds so we can understand. And so we can have shawq from now, we can have desire for these things. And this is the main portion or the main purpose of the Jannah which we should spiritually gain. When we read about Jannah, we should have shawq, we should have desire, we should have love for these things which Allah has prepared for us. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? فِيهِنَّ خَيْرَاتٌ حِسَانٌ All through them both are the most virtuous and loveliest companions. Khayratun, very good. Hisan, very beautiful. Hurum maqsurat. Hurum, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ Then which of your Lord's blessings will you belie? Hurum maqsuratun fil khiyam. Hur refers to the eyes being wide, so wide-eyed. Maqsurat means covered. Maqsurat means covered. Now the last passage said qasirat, qasiratul tarf. Over here maqsurat regarding the hur. Both are beautiful qualities regarding women and qualities for a woman to have in dunya. Qasiratul tarf last week, which was described and mentioned, refers to more of their af'al, their character, their akhlaq, that their eyes do not look around, do not see things. A woman is valued as they are protected. They do not see other things, their eyes and gaze is only on their husband. Qasiratul tarf. Maqsurat over here means covered, masturat, that they are covered in pavilions. Maqsuratun fil khiyam. They are covered in pavilions. The concept of mukhaddarat, right, which is in classical Arabic, not what it means in contemporary times, but in classical Arabic refers to that khidr, that which those women, there's a certain cloth and a veil which covers them. Right? So these women are covered with veils, right? They're covered. This is also the sifat of that a woman should have and is guided to in Islam in this life. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ Whom neither human nor jinn has touched before, has deflorated before. So the women of Jannah are pure, never touched, never looked at. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى رَفْرَفٍ خُضْرٍ وَعَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ Therein are they reclined upon lush green cushions. So Allah Azza wa Jalla describes the reclining, and this was the Arabs, they enjoyed their time in which they would recline, and they would use why is reclining so important for the Arabs? Because when you live in a tent, what do you recline on? You can't recline. This is why there's a known, the jilsa, the sitting position of the Bedouins, right? Because they would tie their arms to their knees, and they would sit like that, because that was the closest thing to feeling like you're reclining, right? So you can never really sit and recline in the desert. So their description being that not only are they reclining, but they are reclining on very lofty and very beautiful cushions, which Allah Azza wa Jalla has prepared for them. And Abqari, as some of the TAFSEER mentioned, refers to the the wove and the cloth which is woven, a beautiful soft silk type of cloth from which these cushions are made. وَعَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ, perfect and beautiful. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Then which of your Lord's blessings will either of you belie? تَبَارَكَ اسْمُ رَبِّكَ ذِي الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Blessed be the name of your Lord, the possessor of all majesty and honor. And with that, alhamdulillah, we conclude Surah Ar-Rahman. Just to summarize, the surah is of 3 portions when looking at its meaning. The first, which is Rahman, the all-merciful. And it's important to understand when we first studied what Ar-Rahman means, that Ar-Rahman is one of the greatest names under which many other attributes come under. Right? It's like a name which is an umbrella, and many other names come under. When it says Rahman, it's not only referring to mercy in the way that we understand it. Right? Sometimes the Rahman punishes as well. In the Quran, as it's mentioned, Allah will say they use the name Rahman, and after that mention a punishment. So mercy, Allah's mercy is much greater. Right? In that He grants things existence, creates them. These ulama say that the ijad, the creation of things, starts from Allah's mercy, Him being merciful, and then He grants things, He gives things. So then after that, the teaching of the Quran, which is the most important and valuable thing He's given to the insan, before anything else is mentioned, that is mentioned. And then everything else regarding the insan, regarding the world created for this insan, to move about, to look at Allah's blessings in this life, just in this life. Right? And those things, when we ponder upon them, they should allow us to ponder upon the hereafter then. And the second portion being the punishment. The punishment which is mentioned for an entire page here, and the awe and fear that we should have of Allah Azza wa Jal standing before Him. All of this is mentioned in the second portion. And the last portion referring to Jannah and relating to Jannah, all the blessings of Jannah, so that our shawq increases towards Jannah. As Allah Azza wa Jal says in another place of the Quran, وَسَابِقُوا, that race towards this Jannah. Jannatin arduha ka'ardu as-samai wal-ard, or arduha as-samawati wal-ard. One place in the Quran says its vastness is like the vastness of the skies and the earth. Its vastness is greater than the skies and the earth. Right? So race towards this. And this is something that we should have shawq towards when we hear these ayat. Our desire for those things which are mentioned in Jannah should push us to do a'mal. Right? This is the point of the reward. Right? This is the point of the reward. May Allah Azza wa Jalla grant us understanding of this, the ability to practice these ayat. May He forgive us for any shortcomings in understanding His perfect word. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.